Hello everybody, hopefully you can all see us and hear us. This is our first time using this system as a webinar, so we hope that it's picking up nicely and it's going to work absolutely smoothly. We trust our IT, but we are sure it's going to work fine. I'm Andrew Stoneham-Knott.
I'm Anita Hoffman.
And we're here today to talk about Anita's book, Purpose and Impact, how executives are creating meaningful second careers. Many of you have engaged already and we've shared quite a lot of content, but I'm going to give Anita 2 seconds just to introduce herself as well and talk a bit about then why we wrote the book, where all the key themes that have come from that as well, and pick up on some of the ideas that we touched on when we released those video shorts as well. Over the course of the next 45 minutes to an hour, we've got some polls that we're going to share with you, and if you're logged on through the Zoom video, you'll be able to click at the bottom and answer a few very simple questions, which will just help us to capture a little bit better the demographic and the kind of experiences you may have been through relative to the book. You'll also see the option to log questions through the Zoom system as well. So please do so. We're going to try and check in on them every 10 and 15 minutes as well and make this as personalized as possible for you.
Excellent. And before I introduce myself, do we have attendees online? Just to make sure
we have 11 so far.
Excellent, fantastic.
So
we know what technology works.
It does work, yeah.
So hello, I'm Anita Hoffman. I'm not going to do a long presentation. So these days I'm a headhunter, an executive coach specializing in career change. I'm also a part-time academic at Cranfield University's Center for Corporate Responsibility. And as you know, I'm a just published author. And Andrew just asked me, what are you going to say about yourself? I said that I think the thing that qualifies me most for writing this book is the fact that I've changed companies 5 times and careers twice, I think, and other people say 3 times. However, I don't consider doing the same type of work in a different business model as a career change.
Yeah.
Working for myself, doing this rather than a big firm. So then the next question you asked me was, why did I write this book?
Yeah.
As I just said, and I'm as a headhunter and coach, I talk to executives around the world all the time. And between now, when I work for myself, I talk to about 1,000 executives every year. And before, when I was in a big headhunting firm, almost 2,000 every year. And after the financial crisis, it became very clear that senior professionals and executives started to think very differently about their careers. Mm-hmm. So when I called up about the big new job, instead of saying, yeah, let's look at it like they would have before, they said, if it's just a bit more money, a bigger brand, I think I'd rather stay where I am until I leave or they kick me out. And then I want to do something with meaning or give back. And that I hadn't really heard before. And over the next couple of years, I started to see the amount of charitable work and not-for-profit work go up exponentially on their CVs. I said, something is really going on here. And people are clearly starting to think very differently about their lives and careers. And over time, I realized that this was a real trend. And when I then tried to figure out why they kept on asking me and have a conversation about careers rather than jobs, I realized there was nothing written for this cadre of executives that worked internationally, solved really complex problems with people from lots of cultures. Everything was either for people who were in their 30s mid-career, or it was about retiring and being happy with volunteering, or as one book actually is called, Let's Retire with Attitude.
And then what?
And then what, exactly. Or they were very US focused or UK focused or France focused. There was nothing for people that have worked internationally. Yeah. So I thought, why don't I write that? Because that was clearly the question that had been asked, and it's the questions I asked myself for many years. So in a way, I wrote the book I would have liked to have had 10 years ago.
Yeah, I bet. And I think, and having read it and studied it, and we've been lucky enough to spend quite a lot of time together talking to you, there's amazing pathways and data points through that book as well. I was actually struck by some of the quotes in there as well, which maybe we'll touch on as we go through this, which are really interesting about how when this real analysis gets done and how people really feel, which is often found out maybe a little bit too late. So,
Indeed.
and this concept of career development becoming an essential life skill, what do you think is really triggering that now?
I think there are several things. So one is that with the financial crisis, what most of us realized is there's no safe place anywhere. You know, we can work ourselves to death and think we're going to retire at 45 and be rich, and all our savings can be gone like that in a financial crisis. So if that's the case, you know, we start to think about how do we take our own ships in hand and sail it the way we want to sail it, because we can just as well take the risk because there's risk anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that's really changed.
Yeah.
We've known for a long time that our societies are aging, which means we've had a huge success with longevity, that we live much longer, which we should really celebrate. But we haven't really figured out how that's going to work. So if you think about the fact that even in the UK, within 10 years, we will have, in our adult population, more than 50% will be over 50 years old. That's going to shift a lot of things.
Yeah.
Right? And the other thing is we're starting to realize finally that no, we are not old at 50 or 60 or 65. So we are now looking forward to healthy, energetic years from at least up to 80, when normally people start to have some health problems. What are you going to do with all that time? And we haven't thought forward a lot, because we've had this model in our heads of, you know, we'll call it learn, earn, return, as we call it, right?
Yeah.
So we learn, I go to university, we work so many years, then we retire and we stop. And still, even when we know probably our pensions won't pay, we can't sort of think about another solution. And I am convinced we have to abolish or retire the word retirement, especially in our own heads, and start to think about it another way. And I'll give you a little exercise to do now, which we've never tried, so we should see how this works, about thinking forward. So if you have pen and paper in front of you, draw a line and divide it into decades. So make 10 of them.
Yep.
And put the date of your birth at one end. And then, knowing that it should then be 100 at the other end, if put the cross at the likelihood of how long you might live, and I'll give you some figures now. So if you're born in the mid 50s, you can expect to live to between around 93 years old, so 93. If you're born in the mid 60s, add another 3 years, you can expect to live to like 96. If you're born in the mid 70s, 99, you have a 50% chance to live to 99. And if you're born mid 80s, you have a 50% chance to live to like 102. So, and if you're born in between there, put a cross to where it's likely that you might live. And now put in where you are today, which is 2018. So 2018, and put your age, and put how many years you've worked up to today. And then, now do the thought experiment, because knowing that pension money is running out, the state pensions are crashing, even the private pensions don't have enough money. And if you're going to pay for such a long life, think about if you have to work until you're 90. And look at how you worked today and what you're doing today. If you have to do that for the time up to 90, is that what you really want to do? Do you want to work with the same intensity? Do you want to do the same things? And considering that long working time, how are you going to pay for that longevity? But also, wouldn't there be a need for some more education somewhere? could you really sort of think about working from, for 60 years or 70 years almost without a break? So gap years are becoming very important and interesting, and how we're going to finance them. So when Andrew, you asked me this thing, are we thinking about it enough and early enough? No, and I think when you start to think about it like this, it sort of starts to put it into perspective, and I think you realize that I shouldn't put off thinking about it.
No, I'm astonished actually. So I'm in my early 40s. Yeah. I've worked for just over 20 years. So on those numbers, yeah. I've got 48 more to go. So I'm not halfway through yet.
Yeah.
Which is exciting in some ways, in many ways, really. Yes. You've actually got a lot of time to play with. There's an interesting dynamic in our working society, which I don't want to focus on too much, but it is a reality about age and how much does age impact your development curve within a corporate or any working environment.
Yes, and that's why this kind of exercise becomes even more important, because most of us in corporate life leave or get sort of nudged out in our 50s.
Yeah.
So if you're in your 50s and you have another sort of 40, 45 years to work, or 35, 40 years to work, it's to suddenly have to do that is really difficult. And that's why I wanted to share this insight that all of us should learn career development skills.
Yeah.
So that we continuously develop new options for ourselves and know how to do it, because then it's not this exercise done under duress.
Mm-hmm.
It's a kind of continuous learning that is really exciting.
Yeah.
And it just becomes part of what you do all the time.
Yeah.
And when you know you have options, it's much less stressful.
Yeah.
Whether you're inside the company, you're not as worried about losing your job, or when you get older and sort of doing something else because you know how to do it.
With that though, there's this massive distinction, isn't there, that you've got, I suppose, where I and my team are regularly involved, which is job change, and often that's instigated by us in some shape or form, versus what we're talking about here, which is career change and career management.
Yeah.
Do you want to sort of look at the very clear differences between the two things?
Yes. So for all of you who have changed jobs, the first time you did it, you probably found that just the process of finding a new job was quite obscure.
Yeah.
Even when you knew what you were looking for, more or less, a similar job in another company. But to understand how to do a good CV, how to have good meetings, headhunters roles and recruitment processes, and were you ever going to get there? Even when you basically went from similar type one company to a similar type of company.
Yeah.
So that's a job change, right? When you're doing a career change, you often don't even know where you're going. So B is unknown, and so you first have to sort of figure out where you want to go, and then execute a kind of job change process after your discovery process of what you want to do. And then you often go into even the job change process is different of finding a job in that area, because you're often dealing with people, that come from very different backgrounds. Their type of organizations run differently in their business models. Their recruitment processes are different. So think about going from corporate life to working in venture capital. It's a whole new universe. You have to start to understand how you get the job there. Right?
Yeah, and I think one of the really interesting aspects of your book actually is the specifics of how the how is quite an interesting piece to analyze altogether.
Want to do the poll at some point?
Yeah, let's do the poll. So we're going to just flick on this poll for any of you who are on coming into this through Zoom. You're going to see a poll launch up any second now. There's 3 groups of questions here. It's literally 3 clicks, I believe.
Yeah.
We'll take a look at that in maybe 15-20 minutes, see what stats we've got out of that so far.
Or alternative, just give them 2 minutes and
let's do it.
Let's
get some instant reaction.
Yes, come on, we're on the instant gratification age.
Yeah, exactly. And now we're going to watch it and see how quickly people respond.
Yeah.
So one of the quotes that struck me in the book was by a VP at GSK who I won't mention the name just in case I compromise anybody, but which I thought was really prevalent, which was, I've always wondered why we wait until redundancy to give the best possible career advice to people. And that really struck me as so true, that so many of these honest conversations come arguably when it matters most, but perhaps when it also doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, when it's much later than necessary.
Yeah, and I guess it's how do people go about capturing better insight and information for themselves through a job crafting process?
Right. So I think there are a bit separate those, and one thing we were talking about is how do you develop career development skills?
Yeah.
I guess is what you're really asking, rather than the redundancy and having conversations.
Definitely.
Conversations.
Yes. Yeah.
So the job crafting. So as I said, I talked to lots of executives. So I had lots of anecdotal evidence for how executives who sort of launched themselves into different careers kind of quite smoothly, rather than going to a cliff edge and then starting outside. But I wanted to see and prove what the kind of secret sauce was.
Yeah.
So I interviewed 92 of them. That some I knew, some were recommended to me. And what it turned out that the majority of them had all started this career change while at their major sort of full-time mainstream employer.
Yeah.
And they've done it, some consciously, most of the time it's unconsciously you started. But something called job crafting, which means incorporating something you're really passionate about into your job, whatever. As professionals and executives, we are used to incorporate new projects, improvement projects. We get an idea and we could do this. And we are very used to selling that into the organization.
Yeah.
When it comes to these projects that are one of your passions, of course, it's the same process. You have to see that could it fit into the company's strategy? Because if it does, and you can make it part of your job, you can use resources and time to spend on it, which means both you're doing something for the company and you're learning, you're building all the networks on the outside, and you're gathering all the knowledge you need to then become a credible candidate on the outside. And as an example, who's in the book, which I loved, which was completely unconscious, and he even said, "No, I didn't job craft," until we all started laughing at him, and he said, "I guess I did that." It's Jeff McDonough, who was one of the 3 group HR directors at Unilever. And as many of you probably know, Unilever has a very purpose-driven strategy, and also the sustainable living plan, which includes that they want to improve the well-being of, I think it's used to be 500 million, I think it's 1 billion people now. And one day it struck him and said, well-being of 500 million people, but how about our own people? And he's very passionate about mental health. And he decided to start a project inside Unilever where people would be much more comfortable to speak up about mental health issues, because they had all the support functions for it, but nobody ever used it because they thought their careers would be destroyed. And he was so successful, his first pilot in London, that then Paul Polman said, "This is fantastic." He went global, started to talk outside. And when he then left Unilever, he was working a bit with helping other companies implement purpose. But his big thing is about removing the stigma of mental health in the workplace. So he created a movement called Mindset Work, and he goes around the world now speaking at all kinds of places. So he has become like the person about mental health in the workplace.
Yeah, and the ultimate job craft.
And the ultimate job crafting, but he did it completely naturally because it fit in his job. And something he was passionate about, and fit with the company strategy. Do
you think he had some skills that he was naturally good at that just meant that those things clicked into place?
He's a campaigner in a way.
Yeah.
Very big personality, and sort of has the energy to go out and speak and drive issues like that.
Yeah.
So this was, finding what you want to do is a lot about taking what is it I am good at and that I want to contribute. And where would that make a huge difference, right? right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And for him, it fit completely naturally. That's why he couldn't even see that he was job crafting.
No, that's the ultimate example, isn't it?
Yeah, and it often happens like that. It is something we just go yes, and find a way of doing it at work, and it often becomes our second career. And if you do it well, in the book is also Richard Gillies, who was head of procurement for Marks and Spencer, and he one day had an epiphany and said, "Wonder if you could have, green electricity for all of Marks and Spencer. Nobody had ever done it in the world yet." So he first did some, moonlighting about it to find out, and when it showed that it might be possible, then there was a time when they were creating Plan A, right? And it fit right in there, so he was given lots of time to do this, and because he came up with something so strategic and it worked, he was then offered the job of Chief Sustainability Officer of Marks and Spencer, and then he was recruited out to another company to do that. Right?
Yeah. If you can connect it within a corporate, it has to be the ultimate. It's quite interesting when you connect that with what you were talking about earlier with time, and you reflect that actually you do have time. If you can take perspective on this, perhaps it's almost important not to get lost in the moment, but really think quite strategically about what you're trying to do.
Yes, and that thing of something that you really feel could help change things in the world. And I say, how could my company somehow affect this? Because then it's good for both parties, and can this make good business? So if you think about Unilever and mental health, of course it's good for the business when people are more mentally well.
Yeah.
With Marks and Spencer, as Richard said, I don't think in the beginning people really cared if the electrons were green or brown, as long as they came out of the wall at the right price.
Yeah.
When we needed them. And but then you realize you can actually save money with a lot of these things. So it also was good for the company, that one.
Definitely. And we'll jump onto purpose in a sec. Should we take a look at the poll?
Yes, let's look at the poll.
So, career change, I am 30% coming out at, I have been actively working on my career change for over a year. 40% coming out embarked on a career change just a few months ago. 10% contemplating career change, 20% already completed one or more career changes.
Interesting.
Yeah. If we skip down to the demographic, just to give a sense of the audience. So 20% under 35. Good on you, having some millennials join us. 20% 45 to 50, 20% 50 to 55, 20% 55 to 60, 20% 60 to 65. Yeah, brilliant spread.
So I hope you under 35 didn't get too scared about the fact that you might live to 102.
No, and you're 5% through your working career.
Yeah.
Question 3: what have I found the most difficult when starting my career change? So top ones have been 30% understanding where my skills could have impact, or how I could earn a living from what I dream of doing, and perhaps come to that in a second. Then second, 20% how to explore completely new sectors and topics, and 10% equals is what impact really means and how to get introductions, which actually also we'll come on to that in a second as well.
Yeah. Do you have any questions, by the way, when we are looking at things? Okay. See who's
Not just yet.
not yet.
Any questions, please send them through, and we can access them.
Chat box, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So I guess taking those subjects, and actually a lot of themes touched on there. One is purpose, which I think it's in the header of the book, and it's a big theme. Should we try and just quickly define what we actually mean by that?
Yeah, I think with purpose and impact. Maybe.
Yeah.
So, because purpose is a word that is as much used as sustainability now, so it starts to become a bit, what should you call it, meaning everything. But how I mean purpose is when you work for something that is bigger than you personally, when you're doing things that will have impact, some impact in society. So, and that is the definition most businesses look at as well. So yes, we'll make profit, but what social good could we also affect? So there's quite a simple one, but it's not, how should we call it? No, I think I'll just stop there because let's leave it.
We can we can be on this for hours.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's not fluffy,
Mm-hmm.
And it's action oriented, and it just says, we're doing something beyond business as usual that actually also changes things in society.
Yeah.
And then the question is, of course, how far do you go? Do you like Unilever take the whole company into it, or do you job craft, or do you do like Gibble Aqua be on stage with next week, who created Accenture Development Partners? So he was an entrepreneur, 100%. So we have Professor Grayson and me, who says companies should go all in. Gable says, you should go all in, and I say, be a guerrilla warrior and change your company without them noticing.
Yeah, well, and I think there's such a good argument for that, though, isn't there? Yeah.
Go a bit under the radar screen and get people used to it instead of going head on necessarily.
And isn't that the ultimate test of your skills? If you're going to do it somewhere else, why not try and influence and change where you are first? Build a bit of confidence in that process as well.
Yeah, especially because you already know people. You know how decisions are made. You know what's important and what will not fly.
Yeah, absolutely. So then impact.
Impact, yes. Impact is something everybody is now also seeking in a sense and trying to define. And impact for me when it comes to our own careers is as much as you would like to have. So let's not take the performance angst into this part of our lives and careers also. That doesn't mean that we don't need to do big change on societal issues. And you asked me before about 10x.
Yeah.
We need solutions that can be scaled 10 times, or and there's one, I can't remember who that said now, if you want to be a billionaire, solve a billion people problem. Right?
Yeah.
And when I talk to executives about doing this and having real impact, that's something that really moved the needle. Sometimes they say that's really exciting because they are kind of systems change people. That's how they think.
Mm-hmm.
Other people go, ooh, there will be such a big project. I don't want to run something like that at this stage of my life. But then think about it as, if I come up with a concept, we do some prototyping, and we can see that it's scalable like 10 times over the time, 10 times. Then hand it to somebody else and step back and be chairperson, be part of the board, or an advisor to them, and let other people do the heavy lifting. We don't have to personally carry it.
Yeah.
And it's often what stops people from doing things is they feel, if I start this, I might be doing it for 10 years and I don't know if I want to do it. So find the mechanism and say, I find this exciting, but when I defined it, if that's what is interesting, then I will work so that I have a team to hand it to.
There's always going to be great people there who can take on great ideas.
Exactly.
To deliver great purpose. I don't think that's ever going to be an issue, is it? Well, let's hope not.
No. If you have a credible idea, business model, you get financing, etc. There are so many people who want to come and work with you.
Yeah.
When it has purpose. And they see it's really meaningful.
Yeah. And we were chatting earlier on this concept of purpose, how something I suppose we've noticed, which there is a demographic piece here as well, in terms of not where what purpose means, but perhaps how much of a priority that is to you at that point in your life. Do you have that option of making purpose-driven choices around your career at certain stages of your life?
Yeah, we were debating this before, and as I told you, I was also asked by the young organizer of this Business Fights Poverty Conference, and say, has the baby boomers suddenly woken up to wanting to have purpose because the millennials are all about purpose? And I told her, I said, look, when I started working, there wasn't anywhere to do. No, when we all are young, and most of us want to help change things for the better in the world. But when I started working, at that time, there was nowhere to direct this wish. Greenpeace didn't even exist, I think, or it was just started.
Yeah.
And the only way to affect kind of societal change was literally to march the streets, so chain yourself to trees and be an anarchist. And if that was not quite how you felt like you should spend your life, that all you could do was go into mainstream business and perform. And if we think about the whole NGO sector and this kind of knowledge has developed over the last 20, 30 years. It's very different what you can do today, and it's how people look at it and how business looks at its role as well, and how society looks at business role.
Yeah.
And then you also were talking about when you are in your 20s, you normally only have responsibility for yourself and maybe a partner. But once you have a family, there's a lot of responsibility, and a lot of people don't feel that they can take what they feel is dangerous risks with their family's livelihood and so on. And only when, as we say here in the UK, when the kids are starting to come off the payroll, so people say, well, maybe now I can do things because the consequences is only for me and my partner, but not for the kids any longer.
Yeah, definitely.
It's waves of these things as well. And then there is also something which is just part of our lifespan when we start to realize that life is finite. It's part of our development as human beings to start to think about the next generation and what we leave behind. But if you go back in the philosophers for thousands of years, that's part of our human development.
Yeah, well, definitely landmark birthdays do shift your mental perception of who you are, what you are, what you're here for, and all the rest of it. We've got a couple of questions which we'll take a look at. So first question is it realistic to find an earning career if focusing on a purpose which is about creating societal change?
Yes, so yes. This is it's a very, very good question, by the way. And that's also why I wanted you to do the timeline and think about how much money you need to earn at different stages. Because obviously, different types of organizations pay differently. So the question is, how much do you want to earn? So if you're an investment banker and earn $1 million a year, or a partner in a big consulting firm, obviously you're not going to earn $1 million a year going working for an NGO or for the UN. But in the UN and places like that, you probably earn a couple, several $100,000.
Yeah,
it's not bad pay.
No.
It's if you go work for charities, you also earn money, but less. So the question is, what do you mean by earning? And sometimes that's why this job crafting thing is very crafty.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. In that, especially if you like Richard Gillies and you start small and then they realize that what you're doing is really important, then they might give you half of your time or even a full job in that area. And there are, in Unilever, for example, and other big companies, they have people working on human rights in their supply chain. And these can be full-time positions, and they are good, well paid. It's not investment banker pay.
But what is, really?
Exactly, and what should be.
Yeah.
No, I didn't say that. But so yes, you can. But if you want to go and work in, say, an NGO, for example, then it's a different equation. So the question is, do you do that full time, or do you set aside money so that for a few years you can work in such a position where you might not be earning so much? So whoever asked that, please let us know if we answered the question.
Yeah, I definitely think, though, maybe this is a side point on this, that there is a seismic shift in terms of how corporate, so I'm going to generalize here a little bit. I know not everybody does this, but certainly a large number are really connecting with how they have societal impact with what they do. They become much more intelligent about how they shape that into their own employer value proposition as well. I'm not suggesting everybody's perfect, but I am suggesting that actually you've got to start a job and learn your skill set and understand how and where you can contribute to any cause, whatever it is. I would argue today versus even 5 years ago, it's a fundamentally different landscape. Yeah.
It's hugely different. And there are some very interesting things coming. I was talking to the chief executive of a, how should we call it, not-for-profit, very industry-driven. and who said, I would say what I would like to see is a model, she said, where we could have people seconded in from business for a few years, or if they have left, but they work for us if they don't leave, because they will earn maybe 100 grand, but they're not going to earn 500,000 or whatever. Where they could come in over to work with us for a couple of years and then go back to the companies, senior executives. And I thought, what a very smart idea, right? And that this CEO comes from big business, right?
Yeah.
And can say, I need people, and then we could send out our people, senior people, into their companies and switch with each other.
That's a great idea.
I think it's a great idea, and that way, if you're seconded by a company, they could agree to pay you salary, even going to work in human rights, if that's something that they really support. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's your education as well, and you bring that back into the company.
Definitely. Now, the next one's more complicated. No, I actually can't read it from here.
Any examples of people joining a corporate with a combined operational role and one that's... Any example? Do you have examples of people joining a new corporate? Let me think.
I'll read it again, shall I, while you put some thought into that?
Yeah.
So, any examples of people joining a new corporate with a combined operational role and one that's supportive of a purpose-led societal change initiative too?
Yeah. I'm not sure I can think about it offhand, but I'll have to sort of kind of think of it about what people are talking to me about. And Andrew, you can also share some of your experience, because I haven't really, I don't think I've seen this, except if you are in, how should we call it, the sustainability.
I was going to say, if that's probably the closest, CSOs.
Because today also, the top CSO positions are normally business people.
Yeah.
Today, supported by experts.
Yeah.
But if people come in with a particular expertise, they might have half like that, right? Mm-hmm. Otherwise, these roles are often given or driven by people in the company who are trusted.
Yeah.
If it's a bit new.
Yeah.
You say it's not already purpose driven, so just like the people job crafting, they come with the ideas, and because their colleagues trust them, they say, why don't you do that? That's okay. Let's see how it goes. Whereas if you're new, if it isn't already purpose driven, I think they probably don't even know what they're looking for. Yeah,
I'd agree with that. What I would say though is I can definitely see over the next 5-10 years, this war for talent doesn't go away. Excuse using that phrase, but it's a reality. And I think as companies want to capture and attract the very best, is there going to become a time where you've got to create some other different point of attraction?
Yeah.
And maybe that person's just hit it.
Yeah, and there is another angle on this which would be very interesting, which is the pressure that investors are now putting on companies around climate change, and then they will move on to the SDGs, etc. If you think about the letter Larry Fink sent to companies saying, if you cannot prove that you have climate competent board members and you have a proper strategy, because we are not going to invest in you because we consider you that you're not assessing your risks properly. Mm-hmm. And we saw Helena Morisi a few weeks ago here at LGM, Legal and General Investment Management, going even further. We are going to vote against your chairman in this year's annual meeting. We did it for a few. Last year we are doing it for 20 or something now. Yeah. Because and the reason I want to say that was a few years ago when I was trying to help people find board positions, when the people came with both real serious business skills and also serious sustainability and climate change credentials, nobody was interested in having them as board members. And then you have the half of the operational and the purpose or whatever. And hopefully we will see that change. But the only advice I can say, if you're going for a board position and you have a lot of sustainability, lead with your finance or operational experience, because I think they don't even know how to assess the other side.
Yeah.
And for them, it's still unknown and vague. So, but you bring that as a secondary strong part of you.
Definitely. Yeah, interesting. And it's interesting how you can blend these two. But it does go back to the fact you do need to build your core capability. So I hope we answered those questions. Yes. Looks like we got it.
Thank you.
Any more, send them through. We've got another 19 minutes, so we'll get to as much as we can. One thing I wanted to pull back to, which is a little bit more tactical, but just an interesting thing to touch on, which is this piece about networking. Mm-hmm. And I was interested to pick your brain on this, because I think this is a core skill. Some people are naturally amazing at it. Most of us are not naturally amazing at this and need to understand a little bit better. Have you got any sort of thoughts or recommendations on this?
Yes. First of all, if you're going to go into a new area, it doesn't really help to talk to the same people you know. So let's say you're in chemical industry and you want to become a venture capitalist. It doesn't help talking to other chemical industry people, right? So you need to somehow get to the other people you want to talk to. And what I've sort of learned, because I wasn't a natural networker when I was younger, now I love it, and it's my living in a sense, right?
Yeah.
But I learned over time, and how I learned to kind of enjoy it was when I realized that most of us think about networking as going to do those cocktail parties with all kinds of people you don't know for just networking, and it's all smooching, and it's not that at all. So if you think about networking as trying to find other people who are interested in solving the same problems as you are, mm-hmm. It becomes very different, because you do that naturally in the business you work in today, both inside and outside the company. And it's just the same, but it just happens to be a topic or problem that you are interested in solving.
Yeah.
And it's about realizing that that is as important as the problems you're trying to solve for your company. Right?
Yeah.
And once you realize that, it becomes easier. But if you want to gradually sort of extend your comfort zone, the easiest way is to start by contacting old colleagues that you used to work with, or old school friends, etc., because they will naturally talk to you. There is no barrier, they'll be happy to talk to you, and especially if they've done something that you find interesting and different, if they change careers, if they're doing something purposeful, if they're working in an area you might be interested in, and just ask them, I'm thinking about doing something else. So how did you get there? And also asking them things like, when you get closer to the area you're thinking about, also asking them, what is your day like? And what do you do? What are the fun things? What are the not so fun things? Because we can have idealistic views of what it's really like, and then find out that that's actually not for us.
Yeah.
So the first level is old colleagues and so on. Next level is alumni. So people who worked in the same company, but not when you were there, or you didn't work with them because it might be a big company, who have left. Or alumni from your MBA, from university, from high school. Same thing again, people who are doing things that you find intriguing, interesting, or who can lead you to other people who might be interested in the same thing like you. And it's the same thing. It's about, how did you end up where you are? I'm trying to do this. Do you have advice? And they normally will give you introductions, because just because you worked in the same company or went to the same school, immediately you sort of transfer trust between you.
Yeah.
And once you start to do that, and you realize from meeting people that are connected to you, and then the people they introduce you to, it becomes really natural. And one day you will find yourself writing to somebody you never knew, and you've learned how to put question across, saying, look, I'm trying to do this. I understand you know a lot about this. Would you mind spending some time? And most people, especially if there's something they're trying to change for the better in the world, help.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to solve the same problem, and whoever might come with another piece puzzle, welcome.
Yeah, I think any good headhunter will tell you that people's natural inclination is to help, full stop.
Yeah.
put a common subject in the middle, and 9 times out of 10, it's a good starting point.
And even if the problem you're trying to solve is I need a new job, it still works.
Well, exactly. And everybody learns from that interaction. So absolutely. Jump to a couple more questions here. We have what percentage of your clients have been interested to have a business career with a Christian-oriented purpose?
Good question. I have no idea.
I'm gonna have to say, I agree with you completely. I have no idea either.
Nobody has really expressed it in that way, and it's a very difficult question in a way, because it basically, maybe it's not for but when people from all denominations wish to do good for the world, and nobody has expressed it as a purely Christian-oriented purpose to me.
Certainly what I have seen in the last, I don't know if it's a phenomenon or maybe it's coincidence, the last 12 months, much more focus on corporate ethics, much more analysis of the company, how they operate, what they operate. And I suspect that'll become more, but I guess we have more and more access and data and reference points to companies now than we ever did.
And around companies, it's a lot about transparency and fairness and dealing well with people. What I see outside is, it was a lot about climate change because it's something we've spoken about for a long time, and now I see the SDGs coming in a big way this year. As a framework for discussing how to be better. But I haven't run into that way of expressing it.
No, me neither. But interesting questions. Thank you. Taking this on from the sort of networking piece, and I guess putting it into sort of latter phases of this, and that's really interesting, those examples in Unilever and M&S as well. That to me sounds like a very individually driven motivation. Those characters made that happen through their own motivation skills. And we've talked lots about this, and this is kind of interesting subject that I like, is where does this sit? So you have an employer, you have an individual, who's going to own this now, but also what's the direction of travel with that?
Ultimately, I think we all need to own our own careers. Because we move between employers, etc. So we can't ask one employer to own it. That doesn't mean that the employers don't have a responsibility in this, and that's what the paper I wrote for Cranfield before was talking about. We're going to have much longer careers, that we need to pay for our longevity, but also if you look at demographics, we won't have enough young people. Especially in the developed countries, everywhere except Africa. In the next 30 years, 40 years, we'll have too few young ones. So we need to hang on to people much longer. So that means we will need to invest in both leadership development, more technical skills. But we also need to start to, as employers, think about how do we help people shape these different phases or stages. Because if you cannot be flexible, and that was about flexibility, people will take their early retirement or say, because of caring duties, I'm really sorry, I cannot work 5 days a week or 24/7 or whatever. I have to step out, and then they leave. And employers are starting to realize that they're losing a lot of people that way. And especially the traditional industries need to hang on to their older workers. They're working out with all the technical knowledge, and the young ones don't want to work there.
Without a doubt. And you're seeing this, the war for talent exists in many senses at exactly that. It's that bottleneck gap. Who's going to fill that point? And I would argue, from what we've seen, there actually are not enough people of the quality that are in demand to solve that problem.
So And I got a very interesting question at the conference a few weeks ago when somebody said in the last minute, kind of when I thought I could just relax.
Yeah.
They said, well, what are we going to do? Are we all going to work forever and block for the younger ones, or are we all going to retire? And I thought, that's the problem. We have this idea of a silver bullet solution for everybody, because that's all we've had.
Yeah.
Right, with retirement. That in the future, what we will need to have is the flexibility to have as many versions of later lives and careers and retirements as there are human beings.
Yeah.
Because some of us will be healthy and fit, other people will not. So it has to be a safety net there.
Yeah.
But also there has to be the possibilities and structures so you don't get kicked out at 55 or whatever, right? Or also hiring and also flexible. And companies like consulting firms now, many of them have possibility they can come back and work part-time.
Mm-hmm.
As much as you want to work.
Yeah.
Because they realize they're also losing skills, and sometimes you just need more people on a project. Why not use very experienced people that know your firm and you can trust to do their work? And then do you want to have 3 days work this week, or a day a week over the next 5 weeks?
And it's early days for that, though, isn't it? Because that is arguably in test phase.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, it's not really proven yet that works.
But it is important, and it's also good not just for later careers. It's good for everybody with flexibility, whether you're a young parent, or you're in the middle caring for kids and parents.
Yeah.
Or you're caring for a spouse. We're all going to be carers in one way or the other going forward. And if we don't have flexibility like that, and also this, we talked about in the beginning when we did our timeline, time to have a break and come back, and go and do more education and come back. If you're sidelined because you took a little detour, that's people are not going to do it, and then we are in this situation where yes, we will be blocking people coming up.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't. We should be able to work half of our time and give the rest to the next one, and that way everybody starts to.
There should be enough growth, shouldn't there? But I guess a lot of it comes back to the timeline that you've drawn. But actually, with that timeline becomes a lot of pressure for self-awareness and an ability to have a vision for your own career that you can then plan, which is actually very easily said and much harder to actually implement.
Yeah, I don't think anybody can plan 20, 30, 40 years ahead. But being aware and starting to think about the financial implications, you all need to continuously learn, because that's really what it's about.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, it might feel like deprivation to not watch as much football as we're going to do tonight, and instead
is there a game on?
Is there a game on? Yes, no, I don't know. And instead kind of how should I put it? Instead study and develop yourself. Once you start to do it, it's so exciting and so fun, and it just becomes part of your life, and you're endlessly curious of what next.
Yeah.
And when it comes to planning, I think nobody, you can't really plan more than 2 years ahead. I think it's uncertainty. So, but if you take out, if you think about your lifespan and so on, how you might want to live and work, you can start to see the things that need to be put in place, certain building blocks, and you can start to work towards those. And you can sort of say, okay, this is what really interests me, and what are the options for doing that? If it doesn't work quite the way I planned, would I be happy with any outcome?
Yeah.
For what I learned, and where would that take me? But that's really what it's about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And how can you? I guess there is a sense of control and influence by doing that's quite empowering in its own right. Anyway, I think I've said to you in the past, I'm sometimes surprised that I agree that you cannot plan 10, 20 years ahead. I'd argue you should plan 3 to 5 years and have quite a good grip over that. And I think there's an element of career management with employer and with individual and with peer group that perhaps needs greater emphasis for all of these pieces to be done more effectively. And that's a webinar in its own right.
I know, and I think actually career development skills, this way of learning to constantly learn and develop options for yourself.
Yeah.
That's not something for just your 40s and 50s. We should be taught that, just like we get taught team management skills, time management skills.
Yeah.
All these things we should be taught career development skills as well.
I couldn't agree more. I think we hear about how finance education is going to be pushed into school education.
Yep.
Without getting too far away from this, you wonder how much this ability to understand yourself, a concept of self-awareness and understanding how to manage a career should be something that's coming in much earlier than maybe when we're hitting it in our 30s or 40s, because we're lucky enough to be on a high potential plan or whatever it may be.
How are we doing on time?
I think we're unfortunately pretty much running out. So if we just check if there's other questions that come through.
Thank you.
We're good. Yeah, thank you.
So I hope you've enjoyed that. We enjoyed it.
We did.
And thank you for listening. And hopefully we'll have some more talking about various aspects of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's plenty more to find out in the book as well. So yeah, hopefully to speak to you all again. And thanks for participating as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.